I don't know about you, but I only trust the best. So if you're looking at getting your roof checked out, redone, these are the guys that can help you. Belcher Roofing and Construction, they are the best. They'll come out, do a free inspection. You can trust them with your roof. Call them, Belcher Roofing and Construction. 405-952-7777. That's Belcher Roofing and Construction.
This is the Jake for the State podcast, and this is the call for every red-blooded, God-fearing, liberty-loving patriot to prepare yourself, take your position, stand your ground, and advance the cause of freedom. Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Jake for the State podcast. And today I have Jana Belcher with me with the Constitutional Home Educators Alliance. We're going to be talking about all things homeschooling here in the state of Oklahoma. Hey, welcome to the show, Jana.
Hi, thank you for having me again, Jake. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, we know that Oklahoma is really the strongest state in the union concerning home education. And, you know, the CHIA, Constitutional Home Educators Alliance, is a great organization that really comes alongside home educators, homeschoolers, to make sure they have the right resources and they have everything they need to offer their kids the best education. So I want you to tell us a little bit about CHIA, the Constitutional Home Educators Alliance.
Sure, certainly. So I'm one of the founding members, and I'm currently on the board of directors of Constitutional Home Educators Alliance. We are an organization that's comprised of veteran Oklahoma home educating families. We understand the importance of our constitutionally defined method of educating our children by other means, creating a distinguishable line between public school, private school, and true constitutional home education. So when I said by other means, it's actually in quotes. That is what our Constitution in Oklahoma has a clause that recognizes this type of education, which of course is a fundamental right given to us by God.
Essentially saying that you as the parent can educate your children however you feel is best fit for them.
Exactly. And so because it is something that will bleed over and help all families in the state of Oklahoma, we also recognize that even though we are a Christian-based organization and all the founders and the directors on the board are Christian families, the rights and freedoms that we fight for are for all families and all people who choose to educate their children. And so we operate, our bylaws are operated by Christian values, but we do realize that we're advocating for the rights of all parents, regardless of their personal faith. The organization has been formed with an intent to approach the ideas of parental rights and educational freedom from a decidedly Christian worldview.
Yeah, and the key word I think everybody picks up on there is parental rights. It's the drum that has been beating for the last few years is the parent's right to choose. And we see this in the public school sector, in the private school sector, and even in the homeschool area. And so the parent's right to choose. Are we strong here in the state of Oklahoma on parental right and parental choice when it comes to education in general?
Yes, of course, how that's enforced and how that's played out in individual systems would be the secret, the key to that. So in Oklahoma, by the constitutional authority that they recognize our rights, it's always been where you can accept the government offer to have common education provided for your family, because that is in the Constitution, unless other means of education are being provided. Under that category, we have public school provided by the state. We have private school provided by an institution that parents choose to pay. And then we have other means, which is where all the other home education methods and opportunities lie.
Right. Now, let's talk briefly about this tax credit. So it was recently passed here in the state of Oklahoma. The year prior, the big push was vouchers, which I voted against. I was concerned about the intrusion of government into the private sector, into our homes. The idea is that you're receiving money from the government, and that is not your money. The government is giving you, they always give it with strings attached. When government gives taxpayer money to anyone or any organization, there has to be oversight to ensure that money is spent the way it was supposed to be spent. So for these reasons, I could not vote for a voucher, knowing it would crack the door and give an opportunity for government to be involved in homeschooling, in private schooling. And eventually, this tax credit did pass. And now we see private schools taking this money, and it's even offered to homeschoolers. Where does CHIA, your organization, stand with this, with regard to this tax credit?
Well, I can just tell you that we were all fighting against passing this tax credit. As a conservative Republican, I fought against it as the county vice chair, and as a Republican in our platform. It says we do not, the Republican platform says we do not accept expansion of government into private forms of education. And so I would say individually, as individual people, we all fought against this and our different avenues. And then as a board and as an organization, I will read straight from our website. Constitutional Home Educators Alliance primary mission is to educate legislators and families on issues concerning parental rights and constitutional home education. We are not affiliated in any way with public school at home, school choice, ESAs, or vouchers. To mix any of that into parent-led and parent-funded home education would send mixed messages to our legislators and create an irreparable confusion, potentially placing families at risk for regulation. And so we were called fearmongers and all kinds of things, but we all know what happens when you open the door to a line of funding. And like you said, taxpayers want to know where that money is going and what it's being spent on. And so in order for you to infuse money into a private sector of education, it's going to create all kinds of problems, which some we've already started to see. This past year, there were at least 5 legislative bills that were filed. Thankfully, they didn't have much clout. I mean, they didn't go anywhere this session, but it's filed legislation. Now it's in the books. It's filed. I mean, it's language and wording that was filed by a legislator. So we can't just walk away and say, well, it didn't pass this year. It's no big deal. We do know.
Were any of these bills filed by Republicans, or most of them were by Democrats, were they not?
There were a couple of Republican bills. One of them was regarding turning, if you have a homestead exemption, that you could also claim an education exemption if you were also home educating. There were a couple that were how to regulate the tax credit. We know that those rules were written by the tax commission, and when they passed the legislation, it had some guidelines and some things that the bill wanted done, but it didn't tell the tax commission how to get it done. And so those are some concerns as well.
Yeah, it's something that we all need to be alerted to, because this is the way it happens. Nobody, well, not all the time do legislators believe that their bill is going to be readily accepted the first time it's submitted. That's kind of breaking the ice, opening up the conversation. So the ice has been broken. The conversation is open. How now will we begin to regulate this? That is the question. It's been opened. Now we're going to see next year this conversation will continue. More bills will be presented. And I fully expect at some point down the line, we will see regulation on these tax credits. I'm curious about this one concerning homestead and the homestead exemption. Where does CHIA stand on a bill like that?
Well, we actually had it on our alert to vote against it if it came up, to contact your legislators and ask them to oppose this legislation. So it's definitely one that we were flagged as opposing and watching.
Okay, why do you oppose
And I
it?
believe that was Senate Bill 2007. Believe it or not, was written by Senator Nathan Dahm.
Right,
And
which
so
he has the reputation of being the most conservative senator in Oklahoma history. So why would this be an alert to you?
our opinion is that it's a knee-jerk reaction to those who say we don't even use the school system, so why should we pay in? Well, for one, our state constitution says the taxpayers will provide for the common education of students in Oklahoma, and this is done through property taxes of everyone, even those with no children. So all taxpayers get to participate in voting for or even running as elected officials, including school board members. It's like saying, I never call the police, so why should my taxes fund the police department? If those educating by other means fall for this, then they risk regulation down the road. So if we don't
In
like
what
the
way?
way,
How would that open them up for regulation?
well, because you're filing somewhere with your name on a list saying, I chose to home educate and I'm going to get a break of some kind, a tax credit. It's not exactly a voucher, but currently in the state of Oklahoma, we do not register with the school district. We don't register with the Department of Ed. And some of these legislations that came up would require us to register with the tax commission and or I'm sure they're going to come up with other ways to figure out how to keep track of everyone who wants to take part of one of these tax credits or this homestead exemption.
Right.
And in the past, we were a small enough number that we didn't, there's been legislation. I've been involved for about 20 years of looking at legislation and going to the Capitol saying, leave us alone. We don't want anything. We just want to be left alone. We understand that we're paying taxes on a system we're choosing not to use. We understand that. Most homeschoolers understand that.
So when you have this homestead exemption, it seems like it was written intending to have homeschoolers and home educators' best interest in mind to help them out. Yet what you're pointing to is the fact that you have to alert the state and register, then opens that door for investigation into hey, we want to confirm that you are a homestead, that you actually qualify for this exemption. And you're saying, I just don't want the government invading us, investigating us at all.
Right, exactly. I mean, and it's just our parental right to have children and raise them according to, our own convictions.
So you would rather go ahead and pay the tax and support public education as opposed to be exempt and having government investigate you. Is that right?
And when you say support, I don't. That doesn't mean that I'm in favor of how they're operating it. It just means that I understand that's where my taxes are going. And then there are already proper ways to get involved if you don't like the product. If you don't like the product of public education, we do have ways to get involved and elect board members. I help a lot of people with campaigns personally. I do a lot of activism personally. And I'm involved in my state county politics. So there are things already in place that we can do to try to influence and support people who have like-minded ideas for this system of the public common education. So we don't have to try to get our money back or starve it or whatever. If we want reform, I'm all for fighting for reform. I mean, that's what we do. And I understand getting frustrated at constantly hitting up against, political circumstances when you're fighting for reform. That's just part of it. It does get tiring and taxing and difficult. And in a way, it would be easier just to say, I want my tax dollars back and I don't want to be a part of it. But we all care about society as a whole. We all care about someone told me, well, the homeschoolers pull out of the public school and they want to get a tax break to pay for their own stuff, but they're leaving us high and dry. And that's just simply not true in my experience. I just participated in the state of Oklahoma's GOP convention, and I met so many homeschool families, homeschool moms, dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, people who were very familiar with home education and have for many, many years, who are now actively still involved and or have been involved for a long time in the state politics. And so we don't just leave the other people high and dry to deal with a faulty system. We are very active And I can say that as not just me and my family and a few people I know. I mean, this is a common theme in a lot of these meetings that I've been involved in the last few years.
Yeah, I would echo that. I've seen the same thing. In fact, I would probably argue that I see more homeschool families at political events. I'm talking about family units where you see the mom, dad, and kids all showing up together. I see probably more family units like that showing up at political events than I do families that are involved in public school. And that's not to say that they're not involved in their own way. It's just interesting, a little interesting note that you see these units showing up at political events like the GOP convention. And I think that says a lot, that they're involving people. That's actually part of their education, is a firsthand experience showing up at the Capitol and at these political events. So you're educating your kids in a whole new way with this firsthand experience.
Right. So, out of all the legislation that came up, there were some that were very, very egregious. Obviously, they didn't get much attention, but they included everything from having to turn in receipts to the Department of Ed or to the tax department to become your curriculum and things looked at to make sure they really were educational.
Yeah.
And that's just the first step, like you said. If anything like that were to get passed, how long until it's just, are the receipts actually an educational product versus is it something that we approve of or something that we so-called want to accredit or put our stamp of approval on? And so we don't want to leave that door open at all.
Do we have any numbers as far as how many homeschool families have taken advantage of this tax credit?
Well, so the thing is that none of them have been able to take advantage of it yet. So this calendar year is when they would need to start saving their receipts. And so we won't know that number until next year. And prayerfully, we're talking, all of the coalition groups that I'm involved in are all educating their families to not. I've had multiple co-ops, leaders of co-ops even contact me and say, is there a way I can word my receipt? Because we're not providing a comprehensive education. We're only giving them a support group or access to some tutors or field trips and activities that they can do together. We're not here to, have our name turned in to the state necessarily for a receipt. And so that has been a conversation. How do we protect ourselves from, something that was designed to be used for an individual to get up to $1,000 tax credit, and how does the person that's giving the tutoring or the service protect themselves from having their name listed on anything that's going to come back and get them audited. One thing about this legislation that passed, it did say that 10% of the families would be audited annually, which you remember the voucher fight because, I was in your office regularly during that time.
Yeah, we had a lot of conversations.
So this tax credit language, almost verbatim, I read 37 pages of it during the voucher year. And then when the tax credit came along, a lot of that language was identical, like almost copied and pasted. The only method that was different was how that funding was going to be recorded or reported or collected or so instead of it going into the education treasury and then given back as a voucher, it was going to go into to the tax commission, and those families would ask for it back. So,
now, with the homeschoolers, was that a flat $1,000 return, or is that dependent on your expenses? Do you have to have enough receipts to total $1,000, or do you simply prove? Okay, so
you have to turn in the receipts. However, if your tax liability is less than what you used for educational purposes, you would receive that in a refund. So it, in fact, is a voucher because it's a refundable tax credit. So if your tax liability, for instance, is $3,000 and you have 4 kids and you turned in receipts for $4,000, then you would get $1,000 back that was not your original tax liability. So you would get a refund. Now, not every family is that case. Some families, their tax liability may have been more than what they we're spending.
And as part of these bills that were presented this year to regulate this and to investigate, they were presented as concerns for children who may not be receiving adequate education at home. Again, Big Brother government wants to look over the shoulder just to make sure that parents are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And of course, extreme examples are given where there may be total neglect. And so what do we do with cases like that? Where does Chia stand on cases where, a family may say they're homeschooling, but in fact, they're doing nothing?
Well, in those cases, there's already a system in place for parental neglect and parental abuse that is just an avenue which they are trying to utilize to claim that they're homeschooling, and they're not.
Yeah. And
So,
is that not also
we
a
educate our
vague-
families. We educate our families all the time. There are different methods, and homeschooling is
That's it.
freedom, and it looks different for everybody. But the bottom line is, it's our right and responsibility to raise our children and to educate them.
Yeah. I know a popular movement right now is the unschooling, which is really antithetical to the traditional way of educating it as understood by the public education system. And so it's those that have kind of come out of that system say, we're going to unschool, we're going to take nature walks, we're going to go visit the Capitol, we're going to go do other things as part of just natural education, doing life. But to a certain eye, it would not look like education at all. And so I'm curious about how certain, if some of this legislation passes and investigations are done, would some of that be considered abuse or neglect? If it just doesn't look like education because we've been conditioned to think education only looks a certain way.
Right. I think you answered your own question right there. I feel like there are different levels of types of unschooling even. I've moved more to a relaxed, interest-based learning education over the 22 years I've been home educating. I was trained as a public school teacher. So when I first started, I did the, 5-year-old, you will sit in the desk and you will do these pages. And that didn't work very long with one student plus a baby and a toddler. So I had to navigate the structure of how I educated my child. On the unschooling question, it's like every family does as much or as little of the book work, the actual testing and that kind of thing as they want. But if you do the research, you will find that unschoolers traditionally have done way better standardized testing in the high school years. They will do way better in a lot of your higher education facilities. And you might think, how do they do that when they weren't trained on how to take standardized tests their whole life, and they weren't trained how to sit and read a passage and regurgitate what they were taught. And my answer to that would be, they're thinkers, they're critical thinkers. They've explored, they've researched in depth things that interested them to the point where they understand how to be critical thinkers and analyze things that are in front of them. So in all cases, can I say that everything someone claims is unschooling is actually unschooling? No. But on the percentage wise, do most people who claim to unschooling, if you claim that, then you kind of already have to know what it is. And so for the people who actually study it and research it and claim it and are doing it, it is a very effective method of educating their children. And so,
right. Something that I think is important to note is the shift in public education, moving more from critical thinking, like you said, to be good learners, to sit and receive information and regurgitate information rather than understanding how to assess a problem, think about it critically, propose a solution, these kinds of things that really promote entrepreneurship, individualism, rather than just good worker ants to be part of the workforce and to be good workers.
Well, you brought it up, Jake. But exactly. We're looking at, in fact, I want to share real quick. I don't know how much time we have, but We have
Go
a
ahead.
Home Education Expo coming up in June, and this year, this is our third annual Freedom to Answer the Call Home Education Expo. And so over the years, the last 3 years, it's kind of changed a little bit from the original. We just want families to recognize they're free to answer the call of God in their family, whether it be home education, whether it be a certain type of devotional they want to do with their family. Just different types of education within their home. And one of the things that you mentioned just kind of struck a chord with me. Our keynote speaker is Israel Wayne from Family Renewal, and he's going to be doing a free revival night on June 21st at 6:30 at Randal University. And they have hosted this this will be their third year to host this for us. And the main event is on June 22nd from 9 to 4:30, and this will be a $20 per family. But we do have some scholarships if people can't quite afford it. They can just email me. But one of the neat things Israel Wayne is going to do is he's going to talk about the freedom to answer the call and whom should we trust, the government or the parents. And he's talking about a fundamental shift in our cultural view of the role of parents versus government in the past 250 years, contrasting the statements of the American founding fathers with Ivy League professors, journalists today. And so you can understand better the battle over who should be in control of the education and upbringing of the children. So that's one of the keynote talks that he's going to give, and he's pairing that with the biblical basis for parental rights. We don't just get in here and say the Constitution gives us parental rights. That's absolutely true. But what we're saying is this comes from God to begin with. And does the state even have a compelling interest in your child's education? And if they do, why? And so he's going to kind of unpack a lot of the stuff you and I were just talking about, because we don't get this type of legislation without there being a worldview behind it and a mechanism to try to capture and enforce the ideology that's coming. And so one of our goals is to tell parents that this has been our right and responsibility from the very beginning, from the Bible, and then here in America, how that has transpired over the years. We also have constitutional coaches that are part of the Dave Barton and Tim Barton and the Rick Green curriculum.
Yeah, the
that are
Patriot
going to be
Academy.
here. Yeah, their Patriot Academy coaches are going to be here and working with the youth. So if you have a junior high or a high school student, you will be able to participate in classes for an hour for the junior high and a 2-hour time period for the high schoolers. And we have multiple homeschoolers who have gone to regionals and nationals in speech and debate. And they're also going to participate in that civics and constitutional literacy class. Wow. And they're going to demonstrate how homeschoolers have really championed this idea of learning how to debate these topics. And so they're going to demonstrate and do some hands-on political, probably Lincoln Douglas or some type of debate. So that's again at Randal University, June 22nd. And you can go to ru.edu/expo to find out more about our event. So we're real excited. So we'll have other
that sounds
speakers
great.
too.
Yeah. What does the revival night look like on the 21st? Is that what is that?
So Israel Wayne is coming all the way to do the expo on Saturday. And so while he's here, we're going to just open to the entire general public free here at Randal University in our auditorium. We'll have a little bit of worship music ahead of time, and then he's going to speak about parents' fundamental right, biblical fundamental right to educate their children. And it's going to be for all families, whether they homeschool or not. It's going to be encouragement for your soul. Encouraging fathers and mothers and families who may be grandparents who are raising their grandchildren to really just hone in on that piece of raising their children for the Lord.
That's so good. Yeah.
And then he'll kind of bridge into a little bit of the constitutional freedom that we have as parents and grandparents to, a lot of people are convicted and concerned about what their children are experiencing in school, but they just don't know any other way. And so I think that if they come to the revival night, they will get biblical encouragement to do what's already kind of on their heart. And then the next day, if they want to come back, they can learn more ins and outs and details about how to homeschool. We will have veteran homeschool families doing a panel. We'll talk about transcripts. We have four speakers that are coming to talk about all aspects of it. One of them is Andra Pudwa of IEW, Institute for Excellence in Writing. And
Okay,
he's going to speak about struggling readers and what you can do to encourage reading in multiple modalities. So it's not just printed words on the page that help your children learn to read. And then so we have Nikki Truesdale.
June 21st and 22nd.
Yes, June
over
21st,
at
22nd.
Randal University. So, and I'm sure they can go to your, you said ru.edu/expo, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
and then
that would
on
give all
our
the information.
Facebook pages, we have a Home Education Expo Freedom to Answer the Call Facebook page, and then our Constitutional Home Educators Alliance Facebook page also will have that information. So our board has sponsored this and been the keynote speaker the last 2 years. And so this year we brought Israel because we've known him for years, but we caught some podcasts of him speaking on these same topics. Mm-hmm. And we really felt like, and prayed about it, and felt like he would really help us with that type of messaging and freedom. And this year, our Bible verse is, "Thy word have I hid in my heart, that I might not sin against thee. And thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." And so we want to encourage families as they get more into God's word and as they let it illuminate their path. If their path leads them to a different education system, such as home education, we want to be there to work alongside them, to support them, to give them resources, activities, ideas. We have space for 60 exhibitors, and last year we had almost a capacity. We had 400 to 500 people here last year, and we are looking at doing everything from PE classes, homeschool co-ops, tutoring, people who do biblical counseling and marriages, just to kind of encourage you in your walk. We have all kinds of activities planned. We're going to have food trucks, and hopefully the local fire department and the libraries coming with some of their activities that you can learn about throughout the year. And so we're just partnering with several homeschool groups. The Norman Home Educators Association are sponsoring this event alongside us. The multiple co-ops, which are smaller groups of homeschoolers who get together and teach each other's children one day a week or 2 days a week. Or some of the families offer tutoring for a small fee. And so it's just going to be a fun,
it's going to be a tremendous event. Absolutely. Yeah. Just a reminder, guys, it's coming up June 21st and 22nd. And, you can share this podcast. That's a great way to get the word out, and also help educate people about homeschooling in general, home education here in Oklahoma, legislation that's been working its way through that would impact home education. But this expo is a great resource, even if you're just considering it, possibly thinking, hey, I may want to pull out of public school or private school and just home educate. This would be a great way to expose yourself to a lot of people, the community, the resources, and get an idea if this is going to be a good fit for you. But Jana, I really appreciate what you do through the Constitutional Home Educators Alliance. How can people find out more about what you do at CHIA?
Well, we do have a website, and it's pretty long right now. It's constitutionalhomeeducators.org. We also have a Facebook page with the same name, Constitutional Home Educators. And then we send out information if you go to our website and you click subscribe, it's basically when we have an alert or something super important. We do legislative impact days at the state capitol, typically our first or second week of session, so somewhere around February 3rd, 5th, 6th, somewhere around there. We will go and take prayer cards and bread or put together little packages of homemade goodies and just take them to the legislators and the legislative assistants. and just pray with people in their offices, talk to them a little bit about homeschooling if they want to. If there are bills that have been filed that we're concerned about, we will make a card. On the other side of the prayer card, we will put the bill numbers, and we would just ask representatives and senators to vote no or to not support, or to support if it's one that we are in favor of. 2 years ago, there was a bill written by Representative Rick West that we supported, because right now for the Oklahoma Promise, there's a discrimination if you home educate. So if you're a public school student, you only have to get a 19 on the ACT. But if you're a homeschooler, you have to get a 21 on the ACT in order to receive the Oklahoma Promise moving forward in your education as you go to college. And so he had written legislation that would level that at 19. And then this year we talked about him running it where we would level it at 21. So if they don't want to let us get the same score that they're requiring of public school, then move their score up to what they're requiring us to
I
get.
like raising the standard. That's good. But just an example of what kind of legislation's out there in the works, and the engagement that you guys have up at the Capitol, and a great learning opportunity for kids to be involved and go up to the Capitol and learn about the process. I mean, lots of homeschool families join you up there at the Capitol Day as an opportunity to teach about the process. So I think that's a wonderful opportunity as well. I have to wrap it up, but guys, go check out constitutionalhomeeducators.org to find out more, and go to ru.edu/expo to find out about this upcoming Home Educators Expo. Jen, I really appreciate your time today and all you guys do in the state of Oklahoma. So we'll have to check back in with you later to get an update on how the expo went. But thank you for your time here, and thank you all out there listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Spread the word, and I will see you next time right here on the Jake for the State podcast.